And thank you once again to Dr. Bambele. So the floor is open now for questions and contributions and comments. If you have any, please raise your hand up and I will call you to unmute yourself and turn on your video to ask your question or make your contribution. So I would, okay, I can see a hand up here. Please, Catherine, unmute yourself and ask your question or make your contribution. Thank you.
Hi there again. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to ask a question. My question is for Dr. Bambele. I really enjoyed your paper. It's something that I'm really interested in. I was wondering, in terms of your interest in the significance of the question of personhood for our understanding and interaction with artificial intelligences, whether why you're interested particularly in the concept of personhood, and I was wondering whether you were interested in this concept from the perspective of moral agency or moral patiency. So where is your interest coming from when you're talking about issues of personhood? I come to the debate from the animal ethics literature, and so of course it's a different way of coming into it. But I'm just wondering why you're worried about this particular issue of personhood. Is it just legal, or is it moral agency, moral patiency? I'm so interested in hearing where it's coming from.
Thank you for your question. Please, Dr. Bambele, you can respond.
Okay, thank you so much for that very interesting question. And so I am coming from the perspective, not really a legal perspective. I mean, legal perspective is usually very...
Okay, please excuse me, Dr. Bambele, we can hardly hear you. Can you speak up a little?
Okay, can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Hello, can you hear me?
Better, thank you.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. My interest in personhood, the entities of AI and its personhood, is not from the legal perspective, given how arbitrary legal personhood can be. Mine is from a perspective of moral status, whether or not we can admit artificial intelligence into the moral community, either in terms of being an object of moral relations or in terms of an object of subjects of moral relations, or even both. But of course, personhood implicates moral status, and so if we can account for that, I am not actually even saying that we should, but whether or not, given the extent conception of personhood that we can, if we can admit AI from the perspective of the conversational account of personhood as artificial as persons. So I am not even arguing for the strong arguments that AI should actually be admitted as persons. Neither am I even arguing that there are in fact artificial intelligence at the moment that should be recognized as persons, but whether, if at all, we have to recognize artificial intelligence as person, the framework by which we have to go about, given the and I am saying that the conventional account of personhood provides us with some grounds for recognizing artificial intelligence as persons.
Thank you for your response. Please, let's keep our questions or contributions very brief. And please, to the speakers, let us keep our responses brief also. So Benjamin, please unmute yourself, ask your question or make your contribution. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. I also thank Dr. Bambele for his presentation. But I think my question touches again on moral agency, especially when we want to talk about whether it is possible or whether we should extend personhood to intelligent systems. I'd like to know can we imagine? Let me say that can we imagine what or how to manage moral responsibility for intelligent systems that has been admitted, so to say, into personhood, especially when we consider that maybe from the point of view of Menkiti, for instance, in the African context, we become persons, not so much about biological functions, but more about being able to integrate within the community. So how do we understand moral responsibility there in that context? Especially maybe let us think in terms of maybe technology, artificial intelligence technology that goes wrong or horrible, So I think that's just my question.
Oh, thank you, Benjamin. Please, Dr. Bambele, you can respond.
I think, thank you so much for the question. And I think it's a very good question that we will have to answer at some point. But like I said, I have raised the caveats in my talk that I am not at the moment actually arguing that artificial intelligence systems should be recognized as persons. What I am for now trying to worry myself with is whether or not there are at present African conceptions of personhood that can foreground our recognition of AI. Should there be need to do that, or should we be engaged in the kind of discussions that we can have? Like I said, when you can, while other from the global north, there are some divergences where the global north is concerned. Some of the concerns will be whether it has intentionality, whether it has consciousness, or it has conscience, or has the capacity for pleasure. Ours is from the conversational account at least, is whether or not an entity could reflect, and could embody the process of that reflection in the way that it interacts with other beings and itself. And I am saying that the conversational account of personhood, the co-conversational account of personhood, gives us that opening to actually think of the recognition of artificial intelligence as persons. Thank you. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bambele. Please keep your responses and questions very brief so that we can entertain as many contributions as possible. Obijeku, please unmute yourself, turn on your video, and make your contribution or ask your question. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Please go on.
Hello?
We can.
Okay. My contribution in this course is based on the dominant use of AI, globally. Now, from the first lecture, I think he based her literature on two principles: indigenous principle approach. Secondly, on techno colonization and colonization, yeah. Secondly, the second lecturer, based her thoughts on relational values of AI. Then third person on AI and personhood, just a question. Then fourth person on human-centered value, just the values, human values attached to AI and their applicability to human society, sort of. Then from my own view, I say that the issue of AI is divided into two. One is based on global South approach and the global North approach. And from the perspective of global South approach, we are trying to integrate the values of AI into African discourse. Of course, AI does not originate from African environment. Then from the values of global North, AI is dominantly used on economy, building economic views or life of the Western world.
Okay, sorry to cut in. Please, can you summarize your contribution, or can you go straight to your question?
My problem now, looking at the ethics of AI and its application in African environment, then my research or my contribution is to find out how to use AI in certain African problems like corruption, in fighting, in reducing corruption or eradication of corruption in Africa. So how possible is it? Based on this, I would like the lecturers now to respond. That is the lecturers, the contributors on this topic now to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, Obijeku. We'll get to your question. I don't know whether, I think the question should go to Bambele. So please, can you unmute yourself and respond? And Dr. Yulia, if you have any response to this question, you can do well as well. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that really is directed at me because of some of the caveats I have raised when I was given my talk. My concern at the moment is how, in the face of artificial intelligence and increasingly social roles they perform, the questions that that we will be reasonable to ask some questions whether or not we should extend moral relations to them and all that, and whether or not we have some framework from the African perspective that can answer those questions for us.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Even the
sorry to cut you short. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Dr. Yulia, I don't know whether you have anything to say to that question before.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Chukwueloka, please unmute yourself, ask your question and make your contribution, sorry. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. My question, Mario, and I want to ask, can AI facilitate critical thinking? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Dr. Yulia. Please.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. I don't know. Maybe I have a technical connection problems.
Okay,
I didn't understand it. Sorry.
He asked whether AI can facilitate critical thinking.
Oh, that's a good. You mean facilitate, like that we are still the thinkers, but AI helps us to do that, or that you think whether it itself will be capable of doing it?
What I try to ask is, can AI help humans to facilitate critical thinking? Is that possible?
So I mean, make it easier for us. Do you mean this? Sorry, it's my lack of English. Maybe is facilitating in the sense of making it easier for us to think.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe not quite sure about it, because if we think of this, the definition of thinking by Socrates, that thinking is always a dialogue with the self. So maybe like an AI in the sense of a generational AI, like a chatbot, might help us to have a dialogue with ourselves, maybe. Very, very cautionary.
Thank you for your response. Sebili, please unmute yourself, ask your question or make your contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Amara. I just have a question, very brief, that when Professor Botha asked the first speaker, Dr. Bambele, about in which perspective is he trying to view this AI, he spoke about, from a moral community, as a moral, from a moral status perspective, and he also mentioned in his response about moral agency. So that being the case, I just want to understand that. First of all, his comment is basically philosophically puzzling and ethically challenging. And I just want to find out that doesn't he believe that now, if we have to view it in that way, it's kind of, bringing into the conversation this aspect of anthropomorphizing or anthropomorphism of AI in a way, this attribution of human traits and emotions and everything to non-human things. And isn't that going to have a negative impact? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bambele, please respond. Doc.
So thank you so much for that very wonderful question. I think it is very, at the moment, at the stage of my, just like I said, is part of a larger framework of research that I am interested in. I will want to just note this question and think over it. Perhaps when we can talk, and I will get your perspective from. I mean, we can engage in a dialogue with that, but I have not anticipated, contemplated that perspective. But I think it is very good that we begin to, especially we are fortunate that it's just the debate is just beginning, the engagement is just beginning. But these are some of the factors that we should really take seriously. Thank you so much
for your response. We'll be taking the last question for this section from Professor Botha. Please keep your question or your response very brief.
Thank you so much. This is a question for Dr. Julia. And yeah, it's really not a question. It's more a suggestion. So I'm delighted that there was a little bit of time for me to maybe just ask her views on this. Thank you, Prof. Julia, for a wonderful presentation. I was wondering whether you considered whether the mention of human-centeredness within the ethics charters is something that is really just a transposition of the concept taken from the idea of human-centered design. So I know that there are at least some people working on the charters who are engineers and creators of algorithms, and so they would have had exposure to human-centered design principles. I'm wondering whether that might not be helpful for you to think about as you investigate what it means when we talk about human-centeredness in the concept of trustworthy AI, that maybe it's just a transposition of this idea from human-centered design rather than something that has philosophical depth and well, the philosophical depth that you want to give to it. So I'd love to hear your views on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, when I first started thinking about this, I had the same intuition, and I was like, oh yeah, there is this, as you say, human-centered design concept that has been around for, I don't know, I think since the 50s, possibly. And it's, as you say, that's really a good point. That might be the reason why it's like superficial, because they just took this concept and they're not really thinking about human-centeredness. But I found it difficult to find a really concise overview about it. It's such a broad field, and very applied. So I didn't have like a scientific reader, you know, what's human-centered design, but I definitely should look into this again. And I think there are even other concepts from industry, from companies that are maybe related to this human-centered design in this sense you're pointing to. Like, for instance, there is also customer-centered not design, but you know, ways to ask customers. Of course, they want to know what customers think, so they can make their products better. And there is, for instance, ergonomic design of, I don't know, of trains or whatever. So they're also thinking of the human that will use the technology in the end. So yeah, thank you for pointing this out to me. I will look into it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. Thank you for your thoughts, interesting and insightful lectures. And also thank you to all those that contributed and participated, and thank you to the audience.